dads. Like we grew up thinking that, you know, two dads couldn't have a family.
Yeah.
So for us to have little Levin and live in this moment is just amazing for us. So that moment was so special.
It feels now like it was all a bit of a blur. Like I remember it so well, but then don't remember it at all. It's such a weird...
Caught up in the emotion and the excitement and the build-up.
We just spent 24 hours crying, didn't we? I think when she was born, she must have thought, God, these two are miserable. We were happy tears. We were just crying all the time.
Hi guys, welcome back to another React. Today we're looking at the case of Adam and Jamie, whose baby was born via surrogacy back in January. And it's their plight to become recognised as the legal parents of their daughter. Before we dive in, please like, subscribe and ring that notification bell.
So for many couples, bringing a baby, those kissing noises weren't for me, were they? She's smiling. It really is. Bringing a baby home is the start of an exciting new chapter, but as well as settling into family life, fashion mogul Adam Frisby and his fiancée Jamie Corbett are also on a mission to try and change the law.
After welcoming their baby girl Levin via surrogacy back in January, the couple are now facing a lengthy battle to be recognised as Levin's legal parents, a move that could help more families in the future.
Well, Adam and Jamie and little Levin join us now, who has had everybody captivated this morning.
Talk about stealing the show.
Goodness me. Congratulations, firstly.
Thank you so much.
How are you settling into parenthood?
Yeah, we're loving it.
Yeah.
I think for us particularly, because we planned for so many years, when it finally happened, we were just loving every second of it. So, and she's gorgeous. So
So far, so good. We're obsessed with her.
Touch wood.
Yeah.
We haven't done live TV with her yet, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, see how this goes.
I've got a feeling she's just going to take it in her stride.
She looks like she's excited.
Were you there at the birth?
Yes,
we were,
Yeah, that was really important for us, the whole journey, wasn't it? That we were there.
Yeah.
So we kind of picked a surrogate we could work with, that we would be able to be there for the birth, enjoy every moment of it, be there for every part of Levin's journey. So yeah, we were, and it was an experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy experience, but we have a newfound respect for women.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Honestly, when we were there, the things that obviously the ups and downs and the crazy moments were a real experience. But again, so glad to have been there at the birth for her. And then she was passed to us after the birth, and then from then it's just been a roller coaster.
Did you do the skin on?
I just wanted to say that's lovely to hear that they were there for the birth. And I think that is quite a common misconception about surrogacy, either in the UK or in international destinations, that the intended parents aren't welcome in the birthing room, which is absolutely not the case in most situations, providing the intended parents are comfortable with that, and most importantly, the surrogate is comfortable with that, and it's something that can be facilitated by the hospital or the birthing suite, then that's absolutely the ideal way for baby to be born.
No, absolutely. I think for when my son was born through surrogacy, my husband and I were in the room with our surrogate and her mom, who was her support person. And it was something that we had been talking about through the whole journey, and it was very well planned and coordinated, and we kind of, we worked with the doctors in the hospital beforehand to know who would be placed where. As my husband said, I only want to be upstream. Because for everybody's comfort, but he was holding our surrogate's hand and encouraging her, and I was in a wheelchair downstream, so I saw my son come out, but it was very well coordinated. I was in a wheelchair so that my son, after the immediate checks, could immediately come to me.
Lovely.
And I was in a safe place. But being in the room, being a part of that, feeling like we could encourage our surrogate and be there to support her, but also as first-time parents, I was the first one to hold our baby. My husband was the one to cut his umbilical cord, and it was this whole team effort, like the way it had been throughout our whole journey.
That's so lovely.
It's so vital, and I think most intended parents and most surrogates even they want that, and obviously there are some restrictions depending on the jurisdiction, depending on the medical situation, and depending on the timing. Sometimes babies come early,
when they want to come,
and parents just aren't there, and that. But I think I agree with you. I think that for a lot of people there's this misconception that intended parents just kind of get handed this baby
in a sort of transactional, cold situation.
Exactly.
And the reality is usually wildly different.
Yes.
we just get on stage straight away.
A lovely picture of you actually, and it's what's that moment like?
That was just amazing. Like, I mean, I get emotional even looking at it, to be honest with you, because we planned for Leven. We thought about it for like 6 years. And we honestly didn't know if this would ever happen for us.
And I also just want to say, I think a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate the thought and intention that goes into surrogacy.
Absolutely.
And for them to say, this is a moment that we've planned for 6 years. This is not something that happens on the spur of the moment. This is not just you wake up one morning and decide, oh, let's have a baby through surrogacy. Yeah. This is such an intentioned and complex process, and it's usually years in the making.
Yeah, and usually much more thought put into having a family through, with the help of assisted reproductive technologies than the more sort of traditional sense of having a child. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
But again, it's that misconception that people just wake up and choose surrogacy very quickly. It's usually years in the planning.
Yeah.
It's like we grew up thinking that, two dads couldn't have a family.
Yeah.
So for us to have a little Leven and live in this moment is just amazing for us. So that moment was so special.
It feels now like it was all a bit of a blur. Like I remember it so well, but then don't remember it at all. It's such a weird...
Caught up in the emotion and the excitement and the build-up.
We just spent 24 hours crying, didn't we? I think when she was born, she must have thought, God, these two are miserable. We were happy tears. We were just crying all the time.
And you went over to the States for your surrogacy. Why did you choose that?
So basically, because of the current laws around surrogacy in the UK, we chose to go to the States because we're legally recognised as her parents in the States from the minute she is born. And also the laws in the States, they favour both the surrogate and the intended parents, which means that basically when she is born, the surrogate then can't change her mind.
Right.
And it also means we also can't change our mind and leave the surrogate. So whereas in the UK, the surrogate has a right until the baby's of a certain age where they can still have the baby technically until this parental order is in place. So, and they can change their mind at any point.
Yeah, as could intended parents. So it kind of is less protection for both the surrogate and intended parents, which is why we went to America, just to have that legal protection.
I mean, there has been situations.
I was going to say that is one of the main drivers that people look to international destinations for surrogacy. The laws in this country are very back to front with how parentage is resolved. And in addition to that, there's so few surrogates in the UK. Yeah. And I think that the legal situation here is a big part of that. A lot of women who begin looking into becoming a surrogate read about the legal aspect, and they themselves don't want to be the legal parent of a child that isn't theirs. Yeah. And understanding the complex process that needs to happen post-birth can often be quite off-putting for a lot of women in the UK to even go forward to become surrogates. Yeah. Whereas in destinations like the US and Mexico, where there is a very clear legal framework of who the parents are, usually from before birth, or if not very shortly after birth, that is, in addition to well-compensated, well-supported surrogacy models, that's another reason why there are more surrogates in places like the US and Mexico. Versus the UK. So I'm not surprised that they looked elsewhere.
No, all of those points that you've made are right, right on the money, I think. And, again, coming back to my personal perspective this is exactly why we chose to look outside of the UK because of those legal protections and what you said about, in other jurisdictions like the US and Mexico, intended parents getting the legal right to be the parent of their baby. Again, in my case, we were the legal parents of our baby when he was about 20 weeks old. So for the second half of the pregnancy, even though he was in our surrogate's tummy, legally we were his parents. Yeah. And I think it's also really important to note that even in jurisdictions, so some states in the US or occasionally in Mexico where there is a post-birth order, there's still a legally binding contract.
Yes.
So even if the judge has not made that official declaration, there's a legally binding contract which protects everybody's rights and everybody's obligations. And in no way, shape, or form can anybody renege on that.
Yeah.
But I also think it's really important what they said and what you pointed out, that for the surrogates, it's actually quite disconcerting to not have those legal protections. And I think from an intended parent perspective, you often, you're kind of almost siloed in your own perspective of what if a surrogate wants to keep the baby. But what I actually think is really interesting is that statistically, it's more likely that intended parents have a change in circumstances, whether that is a divorce, like a relationship breakdown, or financial difficulties, illness, something like that, and therefore it puts the surrogate more at risk of having to look after this baby who is not biologically hers, not a baby she wanted to raise. She wanted to help somebody else become a family, not add to her own family.
Exactly.
So I think it's really important to recognize that that these laws in the UK don't just negatively impact intended parents,
Absolutely.
they negatively impact surrogates as well.
Massively.
In the UK where the intended parents actually say to the surrogate halfway through, actually, we don't want this baby anymore, and the surrogate has a child that they never intended to have. And then the opposite way around. There's very few cases, but there has been cases where the surrogate has decided to keep the child and then the intended parents don't get the baby as well. So the US just protects that, basically.
And the surrogate in your case isn't biologically related to Levin, is she?
No, in most cases now with surrogacy, we tend to use an egg donor. So we used a separate egg donor. We created our embryos, both me and Jamie. She's not biologically connected to the baby at all. But she's...
And I think it's also just important to note that in a lot of jurisdictions, traditional surrogacy, where the surrogate both carries the baby and is biologically related, as in uses her eggs, her gametes, it's actually legal. Most places you have to do what's called gestational surrogacy, where the surrogate is not biologically related.
There's no connection.
There's no connection.
Incredible, what she's done to help us start a family is amazing.
Yeah, we have the best relationship with Krista. She is truly a German. We found a really good one, bless her.
So what's so talk us through the complications now, though, because you're legally Levin's parents in America, but you aren't American.
No, we are.
And you want to live here in Britain with your baby, but you aren't legally her parents here.
No, so the way the UK law stands at the moment is that when a child is born via surrogacy, the surrogate is automatically the legal mother at birth, even if they've got no biological connection. And what's actually crazy is if they're married, their partner, their husband, is the other legal parent. So then it leaves...
Regardless of...
there's no genetic connection at all to the baby.
Nothing genetically to do with your family.
No, so ultimately it leaves me and Jamie, I guess you and Ben almost have the same rights as what me and Jamie do in our situation, which is crazy.
They basically class her in the UK as parentless at the minute because she doesn't... Under UK law, she wasn't born via what the UK law classes the right means.
Right.
So, it's
so because we did it in the US, we are obviously legally recognised in the US. We are her parents, of course, but when we come back to the UK, the law kind of overrides that. So we now have to go through a court process. Well, we have to go through an 8 to 10 month process.
Trying to talk about something serious.
Levin's not happy about that.
It's the perfect way.
It's a great time.
You have to do endless amounts of paperwork, be assessed by social workers just to make sure we're fit enough to be Levin's parents, even though we already are. We have to go to a high court, get parental order. So it's just a big process that really, as new parents, we shouldn't have to go through. We should be recognised, especially in 2026, just like every other parent is for their child.
So it's this parental order you need to get. What's the process, though? How long is that going to take? Is it just a matter of time and admin, or is it more than that?
It is a small price to pay for, obviously, to get our names on Levin's birth certificate.
We do it 100 times over.
We do it 100 times over, we know. But it's an 8-month process. Like Adam said, it's quite intrusive. We have to have social workers come to our house. They look into our history, family histories, and things like that. So 8 months from start to finish. It can take longer in certain districts because we're doing it up in Manchester. It's slightly shorter than here in London.
Right.
But it's just it feels like at this stage it's a bit of a pointless process for us because we're recognised as her parents in the US, and obviously one of us is biologically her father. So
that's the problem. There's no international surrogacy law that kind of covers all jurisdictions, which to a degree makes sense because each country, as we all know, have different laws anyway. But that is what's even more frustrating, I think, for people who have gone through this whole process in another country where they are legally recognised as their parents. That's not the end. They then have to go through this additional process back in the UK because UK law says that birth certificate is essentially worth nothing for what you will need it for to exert any kind of parental responsibility over your child.
Exactly. But what I think is really interesting is that, as you said, there's no one law that covers globally surrogacy. But the UK is one of the only countries which makes people go through this process post-birth. So in the US, for example, if you're a US intended parent going to another jurisdiction, so for example, our US intended parents going on our Mexico pathway, the US recognizes the legal parentage of children born through surrogacy abroad in the jurisdiction where it happened.
Yeah.
So for most of our U.S. intended parents, they don't have to have recognition.
There's
in
not
the
an
US.
additional step.
There's not an additional step. Now, there might be additional legal protections that they may choose to take, but they don't have to go through this process. This is a very unique British situation,
Absolutely.
I think.
Yeah, it is. And the implications for things like that is if you don't apply for a parental order, you're not legally recognised. And day to day, you could say, well, what does that matter? But it can affect things like if you want to apply for a British passport for your baby, there's certain schools, preschools even, where you need to be able to show a birth certificate that has a British birth certificate that has your names on.
Access to the NHS.
Yes, massive one. So it's not just a case of a piece of paper, it's everything that it allows you to do and to be as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And the advice that we got when we were going through this, and I think it was interesting where they said, because we're not American, we still have to go through this. Now, I'm American. I'm a dual citizen now, but I am American. My husband and I still had to go through this process when we came back to the UK, even though I was American.
Because your husband's British.
Because my husband's British, and at that point I was a dual citizen as well. So, in some ways your nationality doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's if one parent is domiciled in Britain and you want to have access to the British rights and citizenship, you need to go through this process. Now, whether that's right or wrong, we can talk about what, but that is the law as it currently stands. And there was a law reform review.
Yep. Quite recently. Well, a couple of years ago now.
A couple of years ago, which actually did address a lot of this. And I think they'll talk about the process that you have to go through for the parental order application. But there was a law reform. Thank you. Law reform that was proposed, and it never got taken up.
No, it's still
pending. I
guess?
I
think that's the official terminology. I think it's been shoved in a to-do file somewhere.
Yes, and unfortunately, I think a lot of it is just because and one of the reasons why I'm so glad that Adam and Jamie are able to bring so much national attention to this is because, for better or worse, surrogacy only affects a very small proportion of the entire population. So in terms of spending political credit, it's not necessarily what a lot of politicians are going to focus on. I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong because I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
But I think it's great that these guys are going out and trying to raise awareness and attention so that more people can recognize actually this is something that might affect, if it doesn't affect me, my friends, my family, my neighbors, or it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And who knows? It'll be interesting to see if we can make an impact.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
It's just paperwork, essentially,
and
on
also
our side.
They've confirmed, the government have confirmed it's outdated. They confirmed in 2023 it's not fit for purpose, but in 2025 they just decided not to move forward with any kind of reform. And I think that's truly because they don't believe that there's enough people out there that support, families like us, which is sad really. So, we want to try and change that,
But it is actually it could become really serious because essentially then there is this giant loophole.
Absolutely.
So God forbid that anything would ever happen to Leven.
Yeah.
But at this point in proceedings, if she had to go and be helped at a hospital, where would you stand with that?
We'd need legal consent. So we'd obviously have to get consent from our surrogate. And luckily in our situation, we have a fantastic relationship, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So it is a really tricky situation. So medical, sort of nursery decisions, passport, all things like that, we have to get legal consent still.
Yeah, so Leven's currently here on an American passport.
Yeah.
We had to get a visa for her to come to the UK.
Wow.
It's crazy. And then, listen, again, that process was quite easy because they've made it easier now. It's like the same as the ESTA form when we go over to the States, but it's still just process. I mean, technically she can only be here for 90 days at a time.
Oh wow, then you'd have to go back and then redo.
Not to the States or just out
away
and then back in again because obviously she is on an American visa, but I don't know.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time you don't actually have to go in and out because she won't have a British passport. Most lawyers, I believe, would recommend just staying put, and actually because they'll have entered on an American passport and then immediately applied for the parental order process. Once that parental order is granted and she is a British citizen and her British citizenship is recognized, it kind of expunges any overstay that she's had while on the ETA.
I think, I mean, I'm not a lawyer at all, but
That was the advice that we got back in the day.
Yeah. So they're not physically going to have to take Levin out of the country and bring her back in or anything like that. But you're right. The advice is usually, look, it's going to be more straightforward if you wait until the parental order has been granted and then apply for a British passport. But a lot of people, that doesn't work for them.
That's
particularly
true.
if they have family abroad and obviously they want to take baby while they're tiny. It's a little bit easier to travel.
Yes.
But in most cases, as they've said, if it was a case that they needed the consent of their surrogate, that's where maintaining a relationship with a surrogate is important. I mean, it's the right thing to do anyway. But also from a practical perspective, it's really important because if there was any documentation that you needed your surrogate's consent, to sign, then it's much easier to just quickly get in contact with her and say, look, she should be aware of the situation that we're having to navigate back in the UK. Can you help us out with getting this through? And there are lots of people that do apply for a passport. It can just be a little bit more complicated if you're doing it before the parental order is granted.
Okay, interesting. And I think it's also really important to note that you can't actually apply for a parental order process until the baby's 6 weeks old. Has that changed?
Well, it's not. You can't apply until they're 6 weeks old. You can start the application as soon as you have the original birth certificate. So once these guys would have got the US birth certificate, their UK lawyer could have started the application process, or they could start the application process.
But the surrogate can't sign the consent.
It's the consent of the surrogate that's needed 6 weeks later. So she has, in under UK law, it's a cooling off period in case she wants to change her mind. So she would give her consent at 6 weeks. A lot of people think you have to wait 6 weeks. So it's actually quite good that you can apply it that little bit earlier, and it's the surrogate's consent that's needed at 6 weeks.
Okay. That's good to know.
But maybe
take that part out, Ralph, since I got it wrong.
But the overall process as they're facing can take 8 months plus.
8 months plus.
It all depends on how busy the courts are.
Yeah, and presumably the jurisdiction where the surrogacy happened as well.
Yeah, and I think how long it takes for the judge to review their case, because it's an international surrogacy case. Their case will be seen through the High Courts in London in most cases. And there's usually more work involved in that application than there would be if in a domestic surrogacy situation. So more paperwork is required, consents, statements, a whole legal bundle needs to be put together. So it's a lot more involved paperwork exercise, but also more time therefore needed for the courts to review everything. And if they have gone, they hadn't obviously, but if they had gone to a country where surrogacy isn't well regulated, the surrogate hasn't been supported, there's questions around her level of understanding of what she's signing, what she's getting into, there can be more questions that are asked at that point, which can prolong that process to getting the parental order approved by the court. So that again is really important in making the choice about if you're going to go international for surrogacy. Make sure that you're going somewhere where surrogates are getting into this with informed consent. They do have the right support around them. They have translation. They have access to counsellors, to support from the organisation that's supporting the whole surrogacy itself, from both a mental health perspective as well as a physical health perspective, because that all goes into making that process when you're back home in the UK much more straightforward, because there's less for the courts to query, really.
Yes. I mean, even so, my court bundle I think was about 250 pages, and that was a straightforward. It was a straightforward journey in the US where we had, where our surrogate had all of that support, had all of that information. We had taken legal advice beforehand. She was on board, her husband was on board, because if they're married, the husband has to be involved and sign consents and be involved in that legal process too. And it was still 250 pages, that bundle. So
worth it though.
Absolutely worth it. But for anybody who thinks that, again, it's easy. It is not. No.
How that sits if we didn't leave for 90 days, but
so ideally what you the two of you are campaigning to change the law.
We are,
to be more like the American way of doing things.
No, so there's lots of complications with surrogacy, and there's loads of things that we would love to try and change, but this particularly is just around making intended parents like us legal parents from birth, and it kind of protects the surrogate as well as the intended parents. Like, we're a team at the end of the day, but we just want to make it fair. So families like us now are basically the parents from birth legally. That's a change we're campaigning for. And we launched a petition on Sunday, and we've got over 90,000 signatures.
Within that short space of time?
Within 36 hours, which is incredible.
Hours,
So 100,000, and they will debate it in Parliament. Exactly. So we are thrilled with that because it just shows how much love and support there are for families like us, and I think that's a big difference we may need to get a change put through.
I mean, she's just
isn't she delicious? I can't take my eyes off her.
I know you can't. But
she is gorgeous.
In amongst all this magic, and you know it's just a legal admin process you've got to go through, it must be a little bit unnerving and unsettling as well, because it's not just a done deal.
Yeah, I mean, it feels heavy in the current climate of not everybody agreeing with what we've done, and I don't know, like, I'm hoping that when we get the social worker visits, they're kind of on side and they support surrogacy. You never know, like, a lot of things go through your mind, and I'm sure it's fine. You know, that most of these parental orders, in fact, we've never found a case where they've not been approved, but it is unsettling. It's process. It's a bit, you know.
And I think as well, like, you know, with our situation, like with surrogacy children, you know, they are planned for many years. It's not an accidental, you know, situation.
6 years, I think.
So you know, they wouldn't go and assess any, you know, heterosexual couple as such, or any you know, regular family, I guess. So it's really difficult for us to kind of face that. So it's just a bit unsettling, really, when you've got to, you know, mentally, emotionally prepare for that.
And we've spoken to surrogates in the UK that have gone through the process, and they are very much on side of it as well, because it's also after the process is finished for them, they then have to go through this as well. So, you know, it helps them too as well, and it also does protect them in ways as well, as it does us. So it's a positive move if we can make it happen.
Well, I'm sure you're going to get the extra 10,000 signatures just to say how incredible she is. Honestly,
how happy and delicious and gorgeous
mine
is
are 19
she?
and 21, but I'm getting broody, Mrs. S.
I know.
She's just delicious.
That's
what everyone wrapped around her finger.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Thank you guys for inviting us on, because not everyone would give us a voice, and it's important.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Very nice to meet you guys.
Thank you so much.
I'm so pleased that they're doing this. These guys, they've got a really strong platform already, and they're a very likeable couple. That they seem very down to earth.
Yes.
They seem, you know, they followed all the right steps. They've clearly taken legal advice and had legal support. They've clearly made sure that the route that they're following for their journey was ethical and was well supported for everybody, which is just so important. And I really hope that they are able to shed more light on this situation and hopefully go towards all of the campaigning that My Surrogacy Journey do, and the other UK-based surrogacy organisations. We're all pushing in the same direction to get this law reform through if we can.
Yes.
So this is just another string to that bow, which is amazing.
Exactly. And I love how for them, it's not just about enhancing the intended parents' rights to their much wanted child.
Yes.
It's about supporting the surrogates and ensuring that the process is better for them as well. You know, I really appreciate that they're looking at it from every angle and wanting to support everybody who's involved in this process. But I couldn't agree more with you. I think it's really important that, you know, everybody looks at the law, which when it was designed over 20 years ago might have been fit for purpose then, but is actually not now, and is not reflective of how a lot of people have to build their families. You know, I always say people don't choose surrogacy because this is how they want to have a family. This is how they need to have their family. And whether it's for a same-sex couple like Adam and Jamie, whether it's for heterosexual couples, whether it's for single intended parents, I think the recognition that so much work goes into having a baby through surrogacy is not being reflected by the courts and by the current legal situation. So I'm so glad that they are trying to bring this to the attention of the public, who again might not have necessarily even known that this was a thing. You know, everybody that I speak to about surrogacy is flabbergasted that you have to go through this process. I think one of the things that's really a great takeaway from this whole video is not just the importance of what Adam and Jamie are campaigning for, but the importance of obtaining really sound legal advice before you start your journey, and whether that is starting your journey through a UK journey or considering international jurisdictions. Having that initial chat with a lawyer to know what the process is going to look like both before, during, and after your baby born is vital. Obviously, if you are an MSJ intended parent, you will receive introductions to one of our amazing legal firm partners as part of your pathway. But even if you are not an MSJ member, please take legal advice from somebody who specializes in surrogacy law. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. We would love to hear your thoughts, but please remember to be kind in the comments. If you enjoyed watching, please also don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next time.